wild, wild Western Conference of the NBA is just getting even crazier as the race for that #1 seed heats up. And in this video, I'm asking you, who's going to win the West and get that #1 seed? I think the playoffs are going to be all about matchups, as they typically have been for the last couple of seasons. But since we won't know any of those matchups, I think teams that are so good at home, like a Denver or OKC, if they get that 1 seed, there's a very good chance that they come out of the West and go to the NBA Finals. So we're going to look at some highlights and some stats and facts, and I want all of you to give me an answer on who you think is going to win the West. Let's break that shit down. Alright, we're going to start out with the current #1 seed in the West, and has been for most of the season. That's the Minnesota Timberwolves, who still are not getting their just due, much like Denver last season. Minnesota and OKC share the same record, and they did split with each other 2-2 in the series. So, since they are in the same division, it comes down to the divisional record. Therefore, Minnesota wins the tiebreaker over OKC currently because they have a little bit better record in the division. They're also 1 game ahead of Denver, but Minnesota and Denver will play each other 3 more times in these last 20+ games, as they all just so happen to be in the same damn division as each other. So if the Minnesota and Denver series does tie, the division record will matter a lot between these 3, if they all end up with the same record, of course. Minnesota deserves a strong look, as these last 20 games are going to be crazy in the Western Conference race, but it's this team who has held down the #1 seed throughout most of the season. It seems like Minnesota has held on to the 1 seed, and every couple weeks OKC takes it for just a few days. Currently, they've shown that their defense travels as well. They've got the #1 defensive rating, and really they have all season long in this as well, but are also 8-2 on their last 10 road games, which proves this. And they'll swarm you anywhere, but they'll need to show this even more so in the month of March. Luckily for them, though, they hold teams to the least amount of points per game. They've got 3 players in the top 10 in defensive rating, and Rudy Gobert is #1 in the NBA. Will probably get Defensive Player of the Year. But in their next 8 games, 6 of them are on the road, and 6 of the next 8 games are also against teams that are above 500. Utah is the only team that they're playing that's below 500 during the next 8 games. When we talk about giving flowers, I think this team deserves the most. They should have a whole garden of them. But I do think that the tough schedule coming up and having to play Denver 3 more times, 2 in Denver, is eventually going to catch up with them, and I do not think they get the 1 seed. What seed will they fall in? Stick around to the end of the video to see. Sorry, I had to do it. Alright, we move on to the LA Clippers, the one team here who didn't have a great start to the season but have really found their way. The Clippers had an incredible month of December, going 11-2 and only losing to Boston and OKC in this month, and then backed it up in January, going 12-3. Then February hit and their hot streak kinda fizzled out a little bit, but they still were above 500 at 6-5 in February. However, losing to the Thunder and the Timberwolves, for example, were huge games, as it then gave the Timberwolves and the Thunder the tiebreakers over them. Well, and guess what? The Nuggets also have the tiebreaker over the Clippers. So they're a few games back from the #1 seed, and they have the tiebreaker over none of these teams. Still, though, if they finish hot like they did in December and January, they could outright take the 1 seed. And you would think that with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and company, that this team would excel on defense, but no, they're very middle of the pack. Where they do hit you at is on offense. They are number 10 in points per game, which is in the top half, but they have the number 5 offensive rating. They're good enough on defense as well to be the number 6 net rating overall, as they've got about 5 or 6 guys that can go off on you. Norman Powell and Zubac even is included. And speaking of Zubac, I think their defensive rating went down a little bit when he was out for that time. Over their next 8 games, I would say they are favorable. We've got a chance to tie the season series with Minnesota in less than a week, and they're only playing 3 teams with a winning record. March 12th and April 4th are their 2 biggest games of the season, in my opinion. On the 4th, they'll play Denver.
this is the team up at the top that has the most experience in the playoffs. Still though, I think losing the tiebreakers right now and being a few games back of the 1 seed in a race this close is enough to not get the 1 seed. I say the Clippers also do not get the 1 seed. That brings us down to just 2 teams remaining, OKC and Denver. Let's talk about the Thunder. Okay. I'm super biased for OKC. I'm a big Thunder fan. But there's a million reasons to like this team and favor them to get the 1 seed. They're the only Western Conference team to be in the top 6 in offensive and defensive rating. They're the number 1 3-point shooting and free throw shooting team. They're also number 1 in the West in field goal percentage. Only the Pacers shoot a better field goal percentage than them. But they're not just super efficient because they will lock you down on defense. They're the number 1 shot blocking team and the number 2 team in steals. Overall, though, they're the number 1 team in stocks. They've got the best net rating in the West as well, only to Boston overall. Are they second to them? Yet they also turn it over the least amount in the West and second overall only to Philly. And they've been able to do this all season long. They've been steady in this regard. These are very important stats. And then you have their home record of 24-6. Only Boston is better at home. If you went just on the numbers, you would say Boston's the best team for sure, and then OKC is second best, and that would be your finals. Their only crutch is we haven't seen them do it in the playoffs. Chet Holmgren is a rookie, and even after acquiring guys like Biyombo and Hayward, they're still one of the youngest teams in the league. Honestly, that's really the only argument you can make against OKC. They split the series with Minnesota 2-2, won the series against Denver, and have won the last 3 games against Denver. They also won 2 out of 3 games against the Clippers. In OKC's next 8 games, 5 of them are at home, and 5 of those games are also against sub-500 teams, which is also a more favorable set of games compared to Minnesota and Denver, in my opinion. Okay. Final predictions, final verdict on OKC's season. I think they've got the best chance to get the 1 seed, other than the team I haven't mentioned yet, the Denver Nuggets. So, yes, therefore, I'm giving the Nuggets the 1 seed, and I'm going to give the Thunder the 2 seed, though. But I am hoping and praying that OKC does get this 1 seed. Not only is it because you get such an advantage, and we're so good at home, but Denver's also really good at home, and they're a championship caliber team. I'd love for OKC to have the home court advantage as opposed to them, of course. So you already know that I gave Denver the number 1 seed, but we got to talk about them too. It's a veteran team that brought most of their guys back, while their youngins are pretty good on defense, and Reggie Jackson has more of a role this season. And in my opinion, this is the best duo, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. While guys like Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and KCP are the perfect guys to play with them. And even though they're not in the tops in the offensive and defensive ratings, they still are tied for the best home record, where I don't care what anyone says, they do have a slight advantage there. The best duo featuring the best basketball player, one of the better point differentials in the NBA, and the reigning champs. As we just saw with Kansas City in the NFL, do not take the reigning champs lightly. They're starting to get hot, just like Kansas City did at the end of their season, winning 6 of the last 7 games. Yeah, as for Denver's next 8 games, it's split at 4 home games and 4 road games, beginning with a home game versus Boston. And if they can beat the Celtics, they'll be the first team to have swept the Celtics thus far, and will likely be the only team. During this stretch, they will start off with 3 home games, 5 home games overall, and the last 3 games would be the toughest stretch of the 8. And they've got a score to settle with Minnesota. Now, they do have to play Minnesota 3 times, but 2 of them are in Denver. And I'm going to give the favor to Denver. I'm going to say Denver knocks off Minnesota and ends up taking the 1 seed. In conclusion, I gave the Denver Nuggets the 1 seed, the Thunder the 2 seed, I'm giving Minnesota the 3, and the Clippers get the 4. If we went just by the numbers, I'd give OKC the 1 seed, and I do think the Clippers have the worst odds of the 4. But granted, OKC's a little bit of lack of experience, and kind of with the fact that it just almost feels too good to be true this early in this team's era, mixed with Denver's the champions. Jamal Murray is really taking off lately. They're really looking like the champs. I give the respectful decision to the Denver Nuggets.
But what do you guys think? I want to hear your answer. I want to hear your number 1 seed and why in the comments section below. We go deep into the teams, whether it's the NFL or the NBA, and because it's March, we are doing some March Madness. So if you think you would like more of this, consider subscribing today. But that's it. Thank you for watching, and you'll catch me in the next one.